They say no one beats the casino. But one man didn't just beat it, he humiliated it. It starts like this. A quiet garage in Las Vegas. Two men crouched over a table, whispering in low tones. Tools. Paint, chips, UV lights, no. Not poker chips. Not yet. These were something else. Something dangerous. The kind of thing that, if done right, could turn $1 into 100, maybe 1,000. If done wrong, it meant prison. Or worse, but they didn't care. Because when you've lost everything, your job, your dignity, your future, you stop fearing the law. You start chasing it, testing it, and eventually breaking it. This is the true story of how a struggling construction worker and a career criminal pulled off the most genius casino scam Las Vegas has ever seen and nearly got away with it. But let's rewind the tape. Las Vegas, year 2000. Eric Morawa wasn't some criminal mastermind. He was a builder, just a guy with a hammer, some skill, and a dream. The city was booming. Hotels popping up like mushrooms after rain. Casinos expanding like they were on steroids. It was the perfect place to build a future brick by brick. Eric saw opportunity and grabbed it, started his own small contracting company, built it from the ground up, hired a crew, took jobs, paid bills. Life was simple, honest. One day, after a long shift baking under the Vegas sun, he stopped at a game hall to blow off steam. That's where he met Jeremy Lewis. Jeremy was the kind of guy who spoke with the volume of someone who had nothing left to lose. Tall, twitchy, eyes darting like he was scanning for exits. He was looking for work, but no one wanted to hire a man with a rap sheet that long. Drug charges, forgery, a few stints behind bars. Employers didn't even wait to finish the background check. But there was something about Jeremy that struck Eric. Desperation, yes, but also drive, hunger. He wasn't looking for a handout, he was looking for a way back. So Eric offered him a job. That's where it began, not the scam, the friendship. Jeremy proved himself. He worked harder than anyone else. Never late, never lazy, and over time the business grew. For a while, things were good, until they weren't. In 2004, the housing bubble started to wheeze. Vegas construction took a nosedive. Projects froze, clients vanished, bills stacked up, debt collectors circled like vultures. Eric's company started bleeding money. And when a business bleeds, so does everyone on board. Then one day, everything changed, not because of a client or a contract or a miracle, but because of a billboard. They were driving home, tired and silent. Then Jeremy pointed at it. A giant $5,000 casino chip glowing in neon over the desert highway. The words, "Want to win big?" stretched across the sky. That chip stuck in Eric's mind. He turned to Jeremy and asked, "You think making one of those would be hard?" Jeremy laughed. "I used to make fake IDs in my sleep, a plastic disc. That's child's play." Eric didn't laugh. The silence between them grew heavy. "You serious?" Jeremy asked. Eric didn't answer. He didn't need to. That's when the line blurred. Between builder and bandit. Between survival and sin. The plan started with research. Real casino chips aren't just plastic toys. They're manufactured in top-secret facilities, built with a mix of ceramic, clay, sand, acrylics, even rare earth metals. They're pressed under extreme pressure and heat. They're not just chips. They're currency. Every casino has its own unique design, colors, and denominations. But Eric wasn't trying to reinvent the wheel. What if, instead of making a fake chip from scratch, they took a real one and turned it into something else? Eric had a new idea: counterfeit by transformation. Take a $1 chip and make it a $100 chip. Same size, same material, just different colors, different label. It sounded genius. Maybe too genius, but Jeremy was all in. They started collecting chips from various casinos, mainly the Green Ranch Casino, one of the oldest and most recognizable resorts in Vegas. At first, they tried making full fakes. It didn't go well. They got the size right, the texture close, but the sound off. Real chips had a hollow plastic click. Theirs, too dull, like stones. It would give them away instantly. They scrapped that idea. But Eric's transformation method? That had promise. They figured out how to remove the center label using boiling water. It loosened the adhesive without damaging the chip. Then came the repainting. They tested colors under different light, sunlight, kitchen lights, flashlights, until they had a perfect match. Then spray coats, careful masking tape, custom mixed stripes. The result was astonishing. Then came the label. They scanned real $100 chips, printed the center label on glossy plastic sheets, and glued them on. For the UV security mark, they used invisible ink pens to mimic the magician's hat symbol. Sloppy placement wasn't a problem. Real chips had randomly placed UV marks anyway. When they finished the first batch, 3 chips, they stared at them like they were holding nuclear secrets. Jeremy volunteered to test them. Eric, ever the cautious one, waited in the car, heart pounding, palms sweating, ready to bolt. Jeremy walked into the Green Ranch like he owned the place, strolled to the cashier, and slid the chips forward. The cashier inspected them, paused. Jeremy's heart stopped. Then a nod. 3 crisp $100 bills slid under the glass. Jeremy smiled. Not too much, just enough to hide the fire in his veins. He walked out calmly until he hit the doors. Then he sprinted. Eric saw him burst out, waving the cash. "Drive," Jeremy yelled, jumping in. Eric didn't need to be told twice. As they sped off into the neon-lit Vegas night, their laughter drowned out the sound of their old lives crashing behind them. It worked. They'd turned plastic into gold. And they were just getting started. Back at the garage, something awakened in both of them. Jeremy's old criminal instincts sharpened. Eric's craftsman hands moved with precision. They didn't just want to do it again, they had to. Each chip took just 10 minutes to transform. $100 in 10 minutes? Untraceable? Untaxed? They expanded. Started forging chips from multiple casinos: MGM, the Mirage, the Palms, Bellagio. Each one had its own color patterns. Some had metallic flecks. Others had glitter. No problem. They studied, replicated, perfected. But they were smart. They didn't just cash them in blindly. They started gambling. Buy chips with cash, play a few rounds, then sneak out. Swap real chips with fakes in the car, and come back in to cash out. That way, if caught, they could say, "I bought these from that table dealer." Check the cameras. It was airtight. And the money? It flowed like water. Eric, once neck-deep in debt, was suddenly buying designer bags for his wife, taking his kids to 5-star restaurants, living like a king. When his wife asked where the money came from, he smiled and said, "New clients. Big construction jobs." She didn't believe him. Not really, but she didn't ask again, either. Jeremy, on the other hand, lost the plot. Luxury suites, drugs, booze, women. He burned through money like it was nothing. Eric saw it in his face-red eyes, dark circles, that jittery energy of a man spiraling fast. Then came the mistake. One night, Eric overheard Jeremy shouting into his phone. Something about money, something about a woman. When he pressed Jeremy, the truth hit like a brick. Jeremy had told the girl, told her everything. Thought she'd be impressed. She wasn't. She wanted money or she'd go to the police. Eric was furious. You told a stranger? I didn't even tell my wife. They paid her 10 grand. Hoped it would end there. It didn't. She came back for more. Another demand, another payment, until finally Eric snapped. This is the last time, he told her. We're not your puppets. She went quiet after that. They thought it was over. But silence sometimes is just the calm before the flood. And on April 1st, 2005, the flood came. A knock on the door, a man in a suit, smiling. Hey, sorry. My son lost his ball in your backyard. Mind if I grab it? Eric nodded. Sure, just a sec. He turned to fetch it, and that's when the man pounced. In seconds, Eric was handcuffed. Armed agents swarmed the house, guns drawn. They weren't looking for a ball. They were from the Nevada Gaming Control Board. The woman had reported them. The casinos had tracked the chips. Surveillance footage pointed to Jeremy. From there, it all unraveled. The agents searched the garage and found it all. Paints, printers, chips, the whole operation. And then they found the workmanship, and that's what scared them most. Because what Eric and Jeremy had done wasn't just a scam. It was art. The chips were flawless, near indistinguishable, mixed into real circulation, worth millions in potential damage. The agents realized something terrifying. If two broke men in a garage could do this, anyone could. The casinos were vulnerable, their system exposed. Eric and Jeremy were arrested, hauled into court. Their bail, $5 million. Each, a message, a warning. You don't mess with the house. They were locked up in high security, treated like cartel bosses. Other inmates were stunned. $5 million? What did you do, kill someone? No, Eric would say, I faked poker chips. Even inside, Eric met dangerous men. One of them, Russian, powerful, was intrigued by Eric's story. Wanted to go into business together. Eric laughed it off, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. 3 days later, a skilled lawyer got Eric's bail reduced. His record was clean. No priors. He paid $12,000 and walked free. Jeremy wasn't so lucky. His past came back to haunt him. He stayed inside. Eric thought it was over. But rock bottom has a basement. Freedom doesn't always feel free. Eric Morawa walked out of the courthouse with sunlight on his skin and handcuffs no longer biting his wrists. But inside, he felt heavier than ever. The weight of everything, of the arrest, the lies, the life he built on fake poker chips, it crushed his chest with every step. He was out on bail, but he wasn't free. He was a man walking a tightrope over fire. One wrong move, one mistake, and it would all collapse. His trial was still pending. His lawyer, brilliant as he was, didn't work for favors. Legal fees stacked up like bricks on his back, and worse, his money was gone. The fake chip operation had paid for everything. His home, his family's new lifestyle, the lawyer. Now, with no income and no way back into legitimate construction work, his accounts bled dry by the day. The pressure was suffocating. Then the memory crept in. That Russian inmate with the slick smile and eyes that looked like they'd seen death and maybe caused it. The one who said, "When we get out, you and I should talk business." Eric had laughed at the time, but now that offer whispered in his ear like a devil. At first, he resisted. He spent weeks pawning his tools, cutting expenses, selling off whatever he could. He even tried applying for odd jobs, but nobody hires a man facing federal charges. Employers took one look at his court paperwork and wished him luck. Luck. That word again. The very thing Las Vegas sold on every neon corner. The very thing Eric had tried to steal. When the calls from debt collectors became daily threats, when his wife began crying at night over unpaid bills, and when his youngest daughter asked why they couldn't go to the nice restaurant anymore, he broke. He called the Russian. The man didn't even ask why he was calling. He answered with, "I've been expecting you." They met at a quiet cafe off the strip. No eye contact. No names, just two desperate men in desperate conversation. "I can't be seen in any casino," Eric said. "I'm blacklisted, watched." "You won't have to go anywhere," the Russian replied. "You teach us, we handle the rest, you get a cut." Eric paused. "How much?" 25% of everything we cash out." Eric did the math. It wasn't safe. It wasn't smart. But it was survival. "Fine," he said, "but you follow my methods exactly. This isn't spray painting toys. You get one detail wrong, and they'll know." The Russian grinned. "We'll do whatever you say, Professor." And just like that, the second operation began. Eric reopened the garage, not for tools or timber, but for forgery. He didn't make the chips himself. That was part of the deal. He taught. He trained. He demonstrated. The Russians would do the dirty work, printing, painting, sneaking into casinos, cashing out. Eric would remain the invisible architect behind it all. He taught them everything. How to strip the labels with boiling water. How to mix paint to match every casino's unique hue. How to create crisp, smooth edges with masking tape and thin spray coatings. How to scan and replicate UV symbols with invisible ink. At first, they struggled. Their chips came out sloppy, colors off by a shade, labels misaligned, the weight just slightly wrong. Eric scolded them like a professor punishing careless students. Casinos don't need much to flag you. One chip with glitter in the wrong spot, and you're screwed. The Russians listened, took notes, improved. Within weeks, they had it down. They launched quietly, sent operatives into lower-tier casinos first, cashed out small amounts, played a few rounds, left with pockets full of real money. The returns started flowing. Eric's share came in envelopes, clean bills, no questions. He paid his lawyer, covered his bills, smiled at his wife again. For a moment it felt like maybe, just maybe, he could ride this out. But something kept gnawing at him. The Russians weren't careful. They weren't craftsmen. They were thugs who'd been handed a golden gun. And thugs don't polish golden guns. They fire them wildly. One night Eric got a call. "They messed up," the Russian said. "What do you mean?" "They tried the high roller room at Monarch Palace. Some chips were off. A dealer flagged one. We pulled out, but I think it's only a matter of time." Eric's throat tightened. "Shut it down," he said. "Shut everything down now. They're going to trace it back." But it was too late, because the casino had already seen enough. Security footage, chip analysis, surveillance cross-checks. And while Eric had never stepped foot inside any of the targeted casinos, the trail led back to him in a way he hadn't foreseen. They followed the Russians, followed the cars, followed the habits, and one night they followed them to Eric's house. He didn't see it coming. Not the car parked a few blocks away with tinted windows. Not the cameras mounted discreetly across the street. Not the men watching every movement from inside a van with antennas on its roof. All Eric knew was that the Russians were coming over for one last training session. He opened his garage, set out the paints, reviewed the label templates, gave a final warning. "You get this wrong again, I walk. Understand?" They nodded. Then came the knock. Loud, authoritative. "Open up, gaming control board." Eric froze. He turned. The garage was lit up like a crime scene. On the table, labels, paints, fake chips, UV pens. There was nowhere to hide. The Russians bolted for the back door, but agents had already surrounded the house. Eric raised his hands. The arrest was silent. No shouting, no struggle. Just the quiet sound of everything collapsing. Back to jail. But this time something was different. Eric didn't fight, didn't deny, didn't even flinch. He sat in that cold cell and waited for his lawyer. And somehow dash, the same miracle happened again. His attorney, the legal fox in a three-piece suit, managed to work magic. Eric pled guilty to 6 charges. No contest. But because the investigators could only prove a small fraction of the scammed $36,000 worth of fake chips, and because he cooperated fully, showed remorse, and had no prior convictions, the sentence shocked everyone. 5 years of probation and community service, that was it. No prison time, the courtroom gasped. The prosecutors gritted their teeth. The casinos screamed for blood. But the judge signed the deal, and Eric walked out. Again, this time something had changed in him. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't celebrating. He wasn't even relieved. He was just hollow, because the truth was, he'd won. He'd tricked the system twice, and now the system would never be the same. Because of Eric, every major casino in Las Vegas installed RFID chips in every gaming token. Digital tags invisible to the naked eye. Chips that could be scanned, tracked, verified. The age of analog cheating was over, and Eric Morawa was the reason why. But he wasn't proud. He watched the world move on. The casinos adapted. New chips, new scanners, better cameras, stronger security. And Eric? He went back to building. Not mansions, not casinos. Just shelves, small cabinets, backyard sheds, quiet work, simple work. Honest work his wife eventually forgave him, or maybe she just learned to live with it. Jeremy got out too older, quieter. His wild streak faded by years behind bars. They never worked together again, never even spoke much. The con was over. The legend was sealed. But sometimes at night, Eric would sit alone in his garage, the same one where it all began, and stare at a small plastic chip, the last one he ever made. He kept it hidden, not for luck, not for pride, but as a reminder that once he beat the house, but it cost him everything. Eric Morawa thought it was over. The courtroom had gone quiet. The judge's voice had been steady but final. 5 years probation, 100 hours of community service. No jail, no handcuffs, no prison guards waiting to drag him away. He had walked out a free man, again. But freedom's never free, not when you've built a reputation in the shadows. For weeks after his second arrest, Eric tried to disappear. He got rid of everything: tools, dies, printers. The garage was cleaned out, shelves wiped bare. Even the hidden drawer where he once kept his chip molds now held nothing but dust. He took a job at a friend's carpentry business, working under the table for cash, built chairs, fixed leaky sheds, installed bookshelves in retirement homes. He tried to return to the man he used to be, the quiet builder who came home tired and kissed his wife goodnight. But the world wouldn't let him forget. Not the news stories that branded him the chip ghost of Vegas. Not the whispered phone calls from strange numbers offering him thousands to teach them how it was done. Not the way his wife looked at him now, like she was still waiting for a punchline that never came. He became a ghost in his own life. Jeremy, now out on parole, lived in a rundown motel 2 blocks off the strip. They crossed paths once, accidentally, at a gas station. Jeremy looked older, slower, like time had finally caught up and smacked him in the mouth. They exchanged a nod. Nothing more. They knew the unspoken rule: let sleeping crimes lie. But just because you bury something doesn't mean it stays dead. It started with a letter, unmarked, no return address. Eric found it taped to his garage door one morning. Inside was a single photograph, a poker chip, black base, golden flames across the rim. It was not one of his designs. Not from Green Ranch, not from Monarch, not from any Vegas casino he recognized. On the back of the photo, one word was written in red ink: inspired. He froze. His first instinct was denial. Probably a prank. Someone pulling his leg. But then came the second envelope. This one had cash. $10,000 in 50s. Clean bills. No note. Just the money. Eric didn't touch it. Left it in the envelope, sealed it back shut, and drove it straight to his lawyer's office. The lawyer, a slick man named Harold Denton, raised an eyebrow. "Looks like you made an impression," he said, flicking the edge of the photo. "I don't want anything to do with this," Eric growled. Harold shrugged. "Then don't. But someone out there thinks you're a legend, and legends don't retire quietly." Eric walked out and dumped the envelope in a storm drain. But the storm was only just beginning. 2 weeks later, it hit the news. $2.4 million in counterfeit chips flood major Los Angeles casino. FBI opens investigation. Eric nearly dropped his coffee. The article listed bizarre details. Chips that looked flawless, UV security replicated, RFID tags mimicked, RFID tags. That was impossible. Eric had never figured out how to forge RFID. That was why his entire operation collapsed. It was the very reason his legacy ended in a garage, not a penthouse. So how the hell? He kept reading. The chips were traced to a new criminal syndicate based in Southern California. Investigators suspected international involvement. The level of sophistication was unlike anything they'd ever seen. One phrase sent chills through his spine. Investigators believe the operation was modeled after the techniques used by Eric Morawa in the early 2000s. Modeled. Someone had taken his blueprint and gone 10 steps further. Eric didn't sleep that night, or the one after. His mind spiraled. Did the Russians leak his methods? Had someone else been watching? He thought about that girl, the one who blackmailed Jeremy. Had she sold the secrets? Or worse, had Jeremy talked? He picked up the phone and called Jeremy. Voicemail. Called again. Nothing. Third time, it rang twice, then a click. Hello, a woman's voice, tired, cautious. Is Jeremy there? Not anymore, she said. He passed. Overdose. 2 weeks ago. Eric stood there, the silence like a punch to the gut. Oh, he managed. Sorry. He hung up. And just like that, the only other person who truly knew the entire story was gone. Now it was just him. And whoever was out there copying him. The FBI came knocking 5 days later. 2 agents in dark suits. Calm. Friendly. That kind of friendliness that's meant to lull you before they pounce. We'd like to ask you a few questions. Eric invited them in. Sat across from them in the living room while his wife stood frozen in the hallway. The questions were vague, open-ended. Have you been to California lately? Have you been in contact with anyone from your past? Are you aware your name is being referenced in a new investigation? Eric kept his answers clean. Honest. He had nothing to hide this time. But one thing Agent Rhodes said before leaving stuck like a needle behind his ear. If you remember anything, anyone who might have learned from you, directly or indirectly, let us know. This isn't just a casino scam. These guys are dangerous. Very dangerous. 3 days later, Eric found a thumb drive inside his mailbox. No note. Just a flash drive taped to a blank card. He plugged it into an old laptop he kept offline, the kind without spyware or updates. The drive held one file, a video. It opened with a casino floor surveillance footage, blurry, but then zoom. A man standing at the cashier window, holding chips, black chips with golden flames. The camera froze on his face. It was Eric, or at least it looked like him. Same jawline, same salt and pepper hair, same nervous eyes. But it wasn't. Eric's breath caught. Someone out there had made a deep fake of him. Not just copied his methods, but his face. They were using his identity. He rushed to Denton's office with the footage. The lawyer watched in silence, replayed it twice. This is bad, Denton said finally. They're framing me, Eric said. They're using my name, my face. No, Denton corrected. They're using your brand. Eric blinked. Brand? You're famous now, in the underground. You're the Houdini of chips. This is tribute, but it's also bait. Bait for what? For the FBI, for the casinos, for you. Eric sat back, the weight of it all sinking in. He wasn't just a has-been scammer anymore. He was a blueprint, a myth, a martyr in the making. Weeks passed, then months. Eric kept a low profile. But the counterfeit scandal exploded. More casinos hit, more fake chips, higher values. International links emerged: China, Russia, Dubai. Every time the news broke, they dropped his name. Inspired by Morawa, it made his stomach twist. Then, one night, a knock on the door. Not the FBI, not the cops. A man in his 50s, leather jacket, scar on his cheek, Eastern European accent. Mr. Morawa, he said, my name is Victor. May I come in? Eric didn't answer. I represent people who respect what you've done. They want to talk, business, partnership, opportunity. No, Eric said. You haven't heard the offer. I don't need to. Victor smiled. You will, eventually, because once you build a perfect machine, the world always wants it to run again. He handed Eric a gold chip, flames along the rim, perfectly printed label, thick, waited. "This is not a threat," Victor said. "It's a reminder of who you are." He turned and walked away. Eric sat in the dark for hours, staring at the chip. He didn't sleep, didn't eat. By morning, he knew what he had to do. He called Denton, set up a meeting with the FBI. The FBI agents returned 2 days later. Eric didn't wait for pleasantries. "There's a new operation, global. They're using my name, my designs. They made a deep fake of me. I have evidence." He handed over the thumb drive, the gold chip, the letter. He expected them to thank him. Instead, Agent Rhodes leaned in and said something that made Eric's blood run cold. "We know. You what?" "We've known for a while. We've been watching you." Eric blinked. Rhodes continued. "You think we didn't track the Russian crew after you got out? Or monitor who they talked to? We've been monitoring you since day one." Eric stood, stunned. "You think I'm behind this?" "No," Rhodes said flat. "We think you're the next target." Silence. Then he dropped a file on the table. Inside, photos. Eric's wife, his daughters, Jeremy's old motel, Denton's office. "Whoever's running this new scam," Rhodes said, "they want to erase the past. Anyone who knows the truth. Anyone who can contradict their story." Eric felt sick. "They're cleaning house," Rhodes said, "and you're the final room." The FBI moved fast. They placed Eric's family under protection, relocated them. Eric disappeared. New name, new city. He got a job at a furniture store in the Midwest. Lived alone in a rented studio. No internet, no photos, no trail. But he kept the gold chip taped under his desk drawer, a reminder of the price of genius, of the weight of being the first. 1 year later, a new report emerged. The counterfeit ring collapsed. An inside man tipped off authorities. The operation was dismantled, dozens arrested. But the mastermind never found just one clue. A final message sent anonymously to the FBI. A photo of a chip, black base, gold flames, and scribbled underneath in red ink, "Morawa was just the beginning."